Anything is possible. New freezer, it's a lot of them.
What's up, buddy?
Yo, how you
How you
doing?
doing? How you doing, man?
Great, man. How you been?
I'm great. Happy Friday.
Yeah, you too. What's good?
Thanks for hopping in kind of last minute on this. We appreciate it.
Happy to help out, man. This is fun.
Of course. So, how's your quarantine going, dude? You surviving? Hanging in there?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of introverts, so we don't have FOMO, and we've been like just kind of grinding, and we're seeing like a little bit more demand for the product. So we've been able to just kind of stay busy with it. We're pretty lucky in that way.
Yeah, man. I mean, obviously, I was, chatting with the group here. For anyone who hasn't tried it, incredible product.
Thank you.
Great alternative to coffee. And, I can see that, man. I could see people, rather than wanting to go and get their $5 to $7 coffee,
Yeah.
opting in for something a little cleaner and healthier and better for you. So,
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate
yeah,
that.
man. So I don't know how much you know about Stick With Your Dreams, but basically we're just really trying to showcase outstanding folks like yourself who are changing the food and beverage industry. And, known you guys for a couple of years now and just been watching the journey. And I think more people need to hear about it. So wanted to bring you guys on.
Thank you. Yeah, always excited to talk about it. It's a fun story.
So without further ado, man, let's kick off. Let's share a little bit more about the MUD founding story. I think just to, start casually, you want to tell a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. Like, I've got a kind of unusual background. I used to be a pro hockey player in Europe and thought I
That's
wanted
badass. I didn't know that. Where at?
Yeah, I was like, I hope people don't ask follow-up questions because I played in about like the worst leagues you could be in and still get a paycheck. So I played in like Italy and Belgium, and I like fell in love with startups, like doing a master's degree during the summers, and got introduced to entrepreneurship and like just kind of knew that this was my calling because you got exactly what you put into it and you were exposed right away, if you weren't a contributing team member. And so like I just loved being around people like that, just from like an athletic background, like going as fast as you can. It's also why like Shane and I have like a great relationship. We kind of match each other's intensity level. But yeah, like I'm coming from a software background. Like I have 2 software companies that I started and 2 others that I helped start. Never thought I'd be in the CPG business, but when I recruited Shane to join me at my last company, he was such an incredible talent that I made him a co-founder, and we got to become just like really good friends. And that's when he was like bringing this drink around the office and just like, yo, you got to try this. And that version of it looked like shit. It was just like he had like a floating chaga mushroom in it. He didn't care what it tasted like. It was just for function. And like, yeah, like when you dig into this story, it's fascinating. Like the lineage of it was like Shane's a fine artist, and he was over in Goa, India on an art residency. Fell in love with chai there, coming from Silicon Valley, where he was also in software. He kind of ascribed to the coffee culture there. And when you go over to India, there's chai on every corner. And he comes back to the States, and this was a few years ago. This was like when the mushroom scene was kind of burgeoning. And Shane was doing fine art at night, had a job, and then does jujitsu and CrossFit, right? And so if you're used to coffee, you got to keep pumping coffee in your system to stay at that level, which completely depletes your adrenals. And this is like right when kind of Aubrey Marcus and Joe Rogan were talking about like the benefits of adaptogens, and he just decided to start throwing it in and making a drink for himself to kind of sustain his energy levels through all these facets of his life. So he added turmeric for anti-inflammation and mushrooms for immunity benefits, and cacao to kind of round out the flavor profile, but also because it has incredible amount of antioxidants. Never intended for this to be a company. And he was making it for himself and didn't care about taste. And then he was like bringing it to our office and wanted me to try it, and I wouldn't try it. And I think he kind of took that on. I think he kind of took that on as like a personal challenge. And one night he actually took mushrooms and went to a concert and like had this vision that like I can do all this myself. And he threw a website up, which is the site we have today, which is beautiful.
It's a beautiful site.
It's kind of like a testament to his talent. That's a Squarespace template, by the way. He just was able to do that in 2 hours. Like that's how good he is. And we just kept it and optimized for conversions. But like he sent me a text message with that website, and my immediate reaction was like, dude, I'm in. Like, wow, let's do this. And I was flying out to LA to help him pack this shit in his garage, or sorry, in his art studio at his house. And the boxes just kept getting larger and larger and larger till it was like just kind of unavoidable that I told him he had to get another job because we had to shut down the last company. It didn't work out. And I told him, dude, if you don't quit your job, I'm not helping you anymore. And like, I'm sending you a check for $25,000 and like, you have to quit your job and we have to do this full time, because the testimonials were just incredible. Like I didn't believe the first 100. And then when we were at 1,000, like you just couldn't believe the product market fit and the testimonials. And we knew we had to do this full time. And so we went out and raised a seed round and like found a co-packer and been cruising since.
It's awesome, man. Amazing story. I think I'd love to just talk a little bit about Cavalry. That was the previous tech company?
Sure.
And are there oftentimes when you look at these, these founding stories and these journeys, there's a lot of overlap. And I'm just curious, can you talk a little bit about what the company was, why it didn't pan out as planned?
Yeah. So, I mean, the main reason it didn't work was because I was a shitty CEO. I got I got fixated on this idea that's a good idea in theory, but in practicality, it just didn't have the product market fit. So the idea of Cavalry was like on-demand prospecting team for you. So like, let's say you're trying to get Dream Pops into Whole Foods or Costco or something like that. You would hire us and we would research all the decision makers at Costco and we would write all of them personalized prospecting emails on your behalf. You'd hit a button and they would all go out on your behalf. And so
sounds like a great idea. I'd pay for that.
Which was the exact reply from everybody and why we were able to raise money, and like everybody wanted this. But when you're talking about like cold prospecting, like the quality of the email is like 1/6 of what actually makes a purchase decision. Like, and it's the least of the other items that are factored into it. So you have to talk about, are you talking to the right buyer? Like, do they like your product? Is it the right time for them? Like, is it in line with like where they're at in their budget? Do they have a budget for it? And so like, you can write the greatest email ever, but if those other 5 things didn't pan out, like you weren't going to get a sale. And like that was coming back on us. And it was hard to get pricing right. It was hard to get like any sort of scale. Like we would close like 4 customers for a company that sent us like $10,000, and that was amazing for us, but like they wanted more. And so it was just really hard to pin down. And like we wanted to develop an AI model that allowed you to like automatically create those, or 90% of those emails that were working. And we just really never got to the volume to teach the model well enough. And so, yeah, like really great idea in theory. We still use it at MUD a little bit for certain things, but just not a venture type business. So
in theory, when you think about prospecting, like I just find it really interesting with our business, we are constantly reaching out to buyers. And yes, it would be amazing to have, waves of emails being sent out that were bespoke to those respective retailers. Totally. But I just feel like there's nothing more powerful than when one of our people on our team takes the time and actually sends the, customized email or template. So I don't know. Super
I agree.
Interesting.
No, I agree with you. It's like why we were able to, I think, raise money. Everybody kind of like was like, yes, this will work if you can get enough data to start generating these like almost artificially. But yeah.
Amazing. So, okay, let's jump back into MUD. So can you talk a little bit about the complementary skill sets between you and Shane? I mean, sure. I've obviously seen his art. It's on another level. And I'm sure that translates through a lot of the brand identity. Even you said early stages website. What about, your day-to-day? What's kind of your complementary skill set?
Yeah, like we have this running joke at the office where like, I try to keep Shane out of jail, and like we just think from completely different parts of the brain. Like Shane doesn't check the mail. He's never checked the mail. He doesn't check it at his house. He's very much like always thinking like vision, art, and that's not a knock on him, by the way. He's just so incredibly talented. And when I joined him, I think what I was most excited about was like, I saw what he did at Cavalry. I saw how fast he moved and how much like how good he was at designing UI, UX, and thinking about the customer, that I wanted to work with somebody where he was doing that full time and I could do everything else. And so like what he's doing on a day-to-day basis is branding, design, packaging. And he designed all our packaging. He designed our site. He did 99% of our Insta posts and the copy there. And so like when I can keep him in that zone and keep the legal, accounting, finance, ops away from him, like we're kind of cruising. And that's why I think we were able to go so fast and only be two guys for such a long time. I have a finance and accounting background. I've done it at all my companies, and I've also ran a couple companies. I've done, sales and BD and read thousands of legal docs. So I kind of viewed it as like, if I can just do this and he takes care of all that, I'm really happy, because I'm terrible at all of that. And so on a day-to-day, Shane's branding, design, copy, he runs our Facebook ads. I do ops. I run the Google ads, or oversee them at least, and then finance, accounting. And now we have more people that are more kind of like assassins that are much better at those things than me, and I just kind of oversee it. So that's majority of the breakdown.
It's awesome. And can we talk a little bit about the basics of the business model? You're primarily direct to consumer, but there are some select retail accounts. But like, how is the business beginning to evolve, and where's it headed? Yeah,
so we're not seeing like a plateau anytime soon, I think, and hopefully with D2C. And with us, we're creative guys, and it's been so hard not to chase every shiny object and every inbound request we've had for wholesale. And so for us, like, we're really just trying to nail down that customer experience, which includes like being able to reply to every customer within 2 hours. And
that's
personally,
awesome.
Yeah, and we just hit that in the last month, which is so exciting for us. And like, had we gone in a bunch of different directions or launched new products, that would have been really hard to do. And so we want to get like our KPIs to a point where they can kind of run themselves, or we feel really great about being able to take on a retail strategy, a wholesale strategy, or even new products. So like, we have some really exciting new products in the pipeline, but they're from a lot of customer like email research on what they want to see, what they want to add. And we're very slowly going to launch them in a very subtle way to existing customers, as to not take away from this hero SKU we have, which is like a coffee alternative. And if you kind of look from above, if we just disrupt coffee and we never launch another product, that's a massive company, right? And so we're very conscious of just not fucking that up, and
smart
scaling with like what's working before we jump into a bunch of other stuff. It's why we haven't gone to Amazon, and why we're kind of pushing that as far down as we can.
And that takes a lot of discipline, by the way. I mean, there's, every day, me in DC, we're always like, oh my God, there's this new exciting opportunity or,
Totally.
avenue for growth. But I have to commend you guys. Like, I even visited I think I was at MUD HQ, the MUD Hut, like a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago. And I saw you guys, packing bags, very lean, but amazing studio with the sauna. That was really also very cool.
Yeah. Still got that.
I love that sauna. But dude, I commend you, because it's so easy to want to build everything. And you guys have been one of the more disciplined companies I've seen. I also have to say, you're within this camp, and this is going to be, kind of a nice segue, of businesses that's really been thoughtful on unit economics and how you raise capital and how you're building the company. And dude, there's so much noise in direct to consumer,
Totally.
and there's so many brands imploding because they raised a ton of capital off of negative or non-existent unit economics. So I guess I'd love to transition the conversation into, what do you think about the D2C world? You're looking at the obvious, like the Outdoor Voices, the Harrys, the Warbies, that camp. And what advice would you have with how you're building MUD and moving forward?
Yeah. So, if I could give any advice to any aspiring entrepreneur, it's that you have to be relentless on product market fit. And if you think you have product market fit, you don't have product market fit. Like, we learned this from our investors in our last company. Product market fit means like, it feels like the industry is pulling you by two nostrils. Like, that's product market fit. And what that means is like, the ugliest version of your product is getting a ton of traction. Like, you don't need to increase the aesthetics at all. Like, that basic product that you have, the ugliest version of it, is getting pull. And like, if you don't have that, you're still at a stage where you need to keep iterating faster or try something new. And so like I'd say once you have that, great. And then the thing that you need to worry about if it's a D2C product is you're going to get into Facebook advertising. There's kind of like, it's rare that you'd find a way around that. And what happens with the Facebook algorithm is like, it's so incredibly powerful that when you launch a new campaign, it's going to, if it's doing well, it's going to sit in open targeting for a while. And you might look at your CAC dropping and you're like, holy shit, like we can go raise money. Like, look at this. And you show your investors, here's our CAC. But Facebook's really good at finding a lot of people that will buy anything to start. Right. And so they'll keep finding those people, and there's a billion people on the platform, right? And especially like with a product with ours that like resonates with everybody, you have to be really careful about the false positives there. So like when you look at your segmentation and you think about the crossing the chasm where you really want to get to those early adopters, or sorry, the early majority, you really have to make sure that you can prove that you've kind of crossed the chasm and that your CAC is going down or it's steady for a bunch of different segments, not just the early adopters that will really buy anything. You really have to look at retention by cohort. So like, is your retention increasing by cohort? Are you showing investors that you're getting better at increasing retention? And so you want to be able to show that data that like 8 months ago, this cohort's retention was 40, but now it's 60. And so those are really powerful trends to show. Anytime you're creating a deck, you always want to think about what can we show that's up and to the right. So is AOV going up? Is retention going up? Is revenue going up? And showing those on an incremental level is a really powerful thing to have in a deck. So,
how about a lot of venture money being pumped into CACs that seem really attractive, and then obviously pre-COVID, I know now it's a lot more cost effective to be looking into paid spend, but did we hit a ceiling with regards to paid marketing, or is it just you have so much noise and so much capital available that it's just less strategic, and the people who are more skilled are still going to continue to succeed?
This is an awesome question. Like, I don't know. I can just tell you some of the things we're seeing, which is like there's just naturally less brands advertising because, right, like board shorts don't make sense right now to drop a bunch of money, and nobody's like going outside as much or like searching for the beach. Well, maybe in California they are now.
Right.
But like, and then more people are looking at mobile. So for some brands, like CAC is dropping, and like to answer your question, like the call might be, the answer to your question still might be, I don't know, but like if CAC is dropping for you, like dumping a bunch of money into it now kind of makes sense. Because you're going to get possibly the lowest CAC you're ever going to see, and then it's on you to keep those customers. And so, that's kind of how we're thinking about it. And, you can get a lot of people in the door. It's just whether you keep them or not. And if you don't keep them, you're not going to be around. And so it's kind of self-policing in a way. Even if you can take advantage of that, you still have to keep them, and you still have to rely on word of mouth once they get in, because that's going to be what's sustainable.
What's funny is there's so many parallels between that D2C strategy and retail. Like, our business is primarily retail. Frozen is obviously really challenging D2C, and we do sell online. Yeah. But yes, it's really challenging to get on the shelf and to win that initial placement. But what's even harder is to stay on the shelf for over a year or 12 months and to continue to get repeat purchases. Yeah. And we see, because there was an influx of capital in D2C, but also in food and beverage with the last 10 years of all these exits, the RX bars, the Skinny Pops, etc., you have this influx of products hitting shelf without the true R&D or the pull marketing that's going to lead to real converted sales or brand loyalty. And so there's so many interesting parallels between, you can get the customer to see and even try your product, but to build a scalable, sustainable business, if you didn't really figure out product market fit, you're done.
Totally. And you know better than anybody, like there's so many horror stories with Whole Foods and how they'll just cut you like in the most crude way. Like, you show up for a meeting and like all your stuff's in a box and you just have to leave. And like, that's, to your point, like if you don't have customers coming back and you're not servicing that account, you're not going to last. It's the same thing with like, we can get somebody in the door. Like I'm okay with saying our branding and our marketing is pretty good. We're good at getting people in the door, but if we don't keep them, that's on us. And like, that's where all of our focus is. Like all of our focus is on retention and customer support.
And what do you see happening over the next, with everything going on, and we don't have to dive into too much on COVID, but what do you see happening to this group of brands, D2C and maybe more retail? What do you think is going to happen?
Man, yeah, I'm not sure. I think that what I'm excited about is that consumers becoming like more educated about like immunity boosting and types of ingredients, and those search queries increasing. Like we're seeing those increases because of this, and I think that's going to put pressure on a lot of these. Like you've seen the infographic on how 6 brands control every CPG, like bar, cereal, whatever. I think that kind of pressure on those guys to have to innovate is good for everybody. And I think this is like increasing demand for those types of products. So I think you're going to see a bit more competition for healthier brands. And I think you're going to see like independent brands popping up more because they can get into the market more quickly, and they can move faster than a Kellogg's or a Unilever, and they can talk to customers at a more personal level. So I'm more wishful thinking that happens. I would love more competition for like what we're doing, because I think educating and selling is always more expensive, and like creating more informed consumers benefits us and the world. So I think, or I'm at least wishful thinking, that more brands are going to pop up that have more like adaptogens in them, or anti-inflammation and less sugar, et cetera, like you guys, right? So I think this is a good forcing function for existing brands and then new entrants into the market.
Totally agree. I also think I think there's going to be a little bit of a period of businesses that relied too much on venture capital and inflated valuations are probably going to go by the wayside. And companies that are built slowly, sustainably, and with pull marketing are going to probably have larger wins and be more successful. Transitioning that to, as you guys begin to scale from, co-packing and making it within the Mud Hut and selling it yourselves to scaling to, industrial grade co-packers, can you talk a little bit about selecting the right group of investors, and also versus bootstrapping, and how you guys thought about doing that as you continue to grow?
Yeah, for sure. And I will tell you, no investor, it's going to be very rare that, how do I say this? If you have 20 investors like we do, a lot of small checks, right? You go to the bigger guys, they're going to try to differentiate on like, but we're really value add. They love saying that shit. And they mean well, and they really do. But if you think that investor is going to provide you like this exponential value, you need to like recalibrate how you think about this. And like that's not to say that like we have 5, I would say, like insanely helpful investors, but their help is like 0.5% of like compared to like what we do on a day-to-day basis. And that's not to devalue like what they do. They've been incredibly timely. But this is just to say, like, don't think that you're going to go raise money and then you're going to have some relief on how much help you're going to get from them. It's really, you just really need to think about it as dumb money. And so like when we were thinking about investors, like we have investors we're really fond of, and the ones that like connected with us, they were customers first. And that really meant a lot to us. And you'd be surprised at how many inbound emails we get. They're like, hey, are you guys taking more investors? I'm like, have you tried the product? They're like, no. And it's just like, I don't even know like why I need to ask you that, or like, why wouldn't you have tried the product? You don't even know like if it works for you. And then like we have some investors that were like, I love it. My wife loves it. I brought it to the office. Like, how can I help? I'd love to be involved. And then like definitely taking that call. That's awesome. And so, that's kind of been the experience so far. And then I think 2 investors that deserve a lot of credit, or like that are really differentiating. One is called Alpha Bridge. We love these guys because they came at us and they were like, our model is around mental health for founders. And they have a sister arm that found us like mental health coaches and co-founder coaches that we check in with regularly. And their whole theory
awesome.
is, dude, they're awesome.
That's amazing. I haven't heard of that.
And they backed it up since day one. And like we have calls with our like coaches, and they've talked us out of like some gnarly situations, or like we all deal with shit personally, right? And like just having your investor pay for that for you is like, that's completely differentiated than anything we've seen. And it's been so helpful. And like those guys are awesome. And so that's one investor. And then another investor is like Kiva. So Kiva started, he was at Circle Up, and now he started his own
Love Kiva. Great guy.
Okay.
He's the man.
I text Kiva probably twice, 3 times a week. Yo, you got a minute? And then we end up getting in these gnarly like financial conversations where I'm like, oh wow, I'm glad he's around. And so like you have guys like that can step up, and like you think about like the next rounds, you're like, okay, we have to make room for these guys for sure. And so I rambled a lot because like
No, dude, incredibly
it's
helpful.
all over the place. Yeah.
Like there are also, like, even within our cap table, there are all-stars who go above and beyond, and people that I speak with every day.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are folks that, sometimes just tough to get a hold of. And so I think you are really picking your family members and like your extension of your family, and making sure that you're being really cognizant of not bringing bad people into your organization is crucial.
Same thing with, so Zach is another investor that falls in that group. He is responsible for about 80% of the money we raised. He's done 2 AngelList syndicates for us, and he helped us find like our other lead investors. And like, he's a guy I can text anytime, like, hey, can you jump on a call? And he's always there. And so like, it's hard to figure out who those guys are going to be before you take their money, but and Zach was an advisor at my last company, so I knew like he was definitely coming into this company if he wanted in. So it's hard on your first go around, but you learn like who you definitely want in your subsequent rounds and in your next companies.
Totally. And it's awesome that this is company number 3 for you. So it seems like you have quite a bit of experience navigating these waters. In the spirit of talking about mental health, I mean, for me personally, and David, my partner, David Cohen, this has been one of the most like emotionally, financially, like just intense experiences. That's why I love having these chats, is like, it's hard to explain what you're going through, whether, one day you're on the moon, feeling incredible, everything is going incredibly well, and you feel, great about the business. Other days you have supply chain issues or fire drills that are constantly popping up. How are you mentioned, this consulting company, or that they're, basically this life coach you work with. Is there anything else that you do to kind of keep your sanity or keep your mental health in check?
Yeah. I mean, I don't drink, I like coffee. Going from coffee to MUD was a huge help for me, because my anxiety came down. I was sleeping better at night. I have to work out every day. Like, it's just dumb if you don't take care of yourself. Try to stay away from like just bad food. And then I think one thing you have to tell yourself is that this is not your identity, right? We have a tendency of that just becoming so blurred. And so when, you end up sending a package to a customer 2 weeks late, and they're like really irate with good reason, right? It's not because you're a bad person. And when you're like first starting out, you always conflate those two things. You conflate how the company's doing with your personality. And I think the more you do this, and like each day that goes by, you learn to sever those ties, or that conflation. And that's helped me a lot. I'm like able to observe it from afar. Like, that's not my identity. Like, that didn't go well, but we did everything we could, and I'm not gonna like beat myself up like I used to over that. And that's like a very difficult thing to do. Also, like, isolation is very difficult for founders, right? Like, so you sometimes don't want to let the team know you don't know what you're doing, or you don't have the answer. And that's always difficult. And like, I think setting a precedent early on that you have a team around you where you want to be able to ask them questions, and they're around you because you view them as smart, and they're here for answers and for you to ask them, what we should do. You don't want to hire people that you can't ask for help with things like that. And I think setting that tone early helps to just kind of distribute that dynamic or that challenge. And when you can like distribute what's in your mind, and you're taking kind of personally to somebody else that doesn't take it personally, it's such an asset, because they don't think about it personally at all. They're just like, it's problem solving. And it gives you like a lot of confidence to tackle a problem collectively, instead of keeping it in your head where you think that's the only place to solve it. So those things have helped me quite a bit, and those things are some things I've observed that have helped me in the last couple of years, just from experience.
It's really powerful, and thank you for sharing and just for like the radical candor. Like it's really helpful for people to just hear, how do you get to that level with a business like this and the mental challenges and roadblocks that come with it. So, obviously really appreciate that. I think also what I always love to ask is just, you've been through 3 different iterations, technology now, attacking wellness and coffee alternatives with MUD. Like, what is your why? What drives you? What gets you up in the morning to say, okay, I'm sure you have days where you're like, man, I really am exhausted. I don't want to do this, but I keep pushing forward because what your mission or what your broader value might be, or values, what your values might be.
Yeah. I have like this, I believe we have like this civic duty to make the world a better place. And that doesn't have to be like solving these like incredibly like massive problems. Like it can start with like, helping your mom with the dishes or something, right? Like every interaction is like just an opportunity. And obviously I don't always like ascribe to that. I'm weak a lot of times where I'm forgetting about that. And that kind of helps me come back to center, which is like, what kind of responsibility can I take up right now, or who can I help right now? And, that permeates in a really fun way at a company where like, I love being there for the team. I love being like the gasoline. I love removing roadblocks for them. And also like, I love our product. I didn't think I would find this much like value or even like partial identity through how we're helping people. But when we see the testimonials that we see and how much healthier people feel and what they're doing, what they're able to do that they weren't before, and how much better they're sleeping and how much they've reduced their anxiety, like that is an insane motivator to keep going. And like, it's been there so many times to get through some challenges. Like you see those testimonials and you're just like, hell yeah. And so I think trying to make the world a better place with like every little interaction is definitely enough to keep going. And then just the product and how that's resonating and helping people is another thing that's part of the why right now. That's really exciting.
Can we transition that? That's super interesting. When you're talking about just big coffee, right? And not to knock any brands, I love Starbucks is one of my favorite brands of all time. But when you look at Starbucks versus Luckin Coffee and everything that's going on there in Asia versus Kopi, I'm butchering the name, but that new coffee chain that just launched that's really successful in India. I don't know if you've checked it out at all.
I don't know of it. No.
Kopi Kanangdan, I think is what it's called. I'll send you a link. Really interesting. Very similar to the Luckin Coffee model. But then you also look at, Bulletproof, or you look at any functional coffee that's launching on the market, starting to become a crowded space. Can you talk about, like, aside from the anxiety and can we talk a little bit more about the health, like the health risks or issues that come with coffee, the acidity, some of the other issues people face?
Yeah, sure. So like, to start, like coffee does have antioxidants in it, right? And for a lot of the population that has this like variation of this, it's this called the CYP1A2 gene. It means that like you're just naturally going to process coffee or caffeine 2 times slower than other people. And so there's people that are just not affected by it, and like and that's great. But then there's people that just can't process or metabolize the caffeine, and so it gives coffee this incredible half-life where you're feeling that rush at night when you're trying to sleep. And so like the 2 main things that like we're trying to focus on differentiating from coffee are like the anxiety and the feeling like that when you wake up in the morning and you need that coffee. You don't love coffee. That's withdrawal. And like there's something to be said there, and there's a reason caffeine is a drug, because its effect on the nervous system. And so there's that element of it. So one would be like, don't think that you really love coffee. Just think about like why you feel that way in the morning. That's mostly withdrawal. You need that caffeine. And then the other thing is like at night, like a great morning ritual starts the night before when you can get some sleep. And if that caffeine is pushing you a couple hours out for sleep, or making it more difficult for you to fall into that REM cycle sleep, your day the next day is most definitely not going to be as optimal as it could be. And then you're back in the cycle of drinking more coffee. So like one of the dangers is just that cycle that just has perpetuated for so long. And I was in that cycle. Like I would go to bed looking forward to the coffee in the morning, and I was getting up at 4 a.m. habitually and just like downing 5 cups of coffee a day, and never thought coffee was the source of like some of the shit I was dealing with because I looked forward to it so much. So it can kind of sneak up on you. Those are the two.
How many mud cups do you have a day?
I'm pretty bad. I mean, bad in a good way. Like I just have that personality type where I'm sipping all day. So I would say on any given day, like max I'll have is 4, but probably 2 or 3.
Nice.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, dude, this has been awesome. I guess the thing I'd love to end on, and thanks for giving us some of your time, is, what does the future have in store for Mud Water? Are you guys going to are there going to be more mud huts, post COVID, more products? What can we, continue to follow along and see and look forward to?
We're so excited about how we become more like tangible in like eventual retail locations for ourselves. Like what does a mud hut look like 2 years from now when we can actually get into our own space? But that's really exciting for us and down the road. In the short term, we are working on a couple new blends that we're really excited about. And like, I think how we're going about it is exciting. Like we're kind of like intentionally not trying to make money on these. They're retention tools to add to the experience or add to the functionality. And so that's one element. And then another thing that we're really excited about is like our decompression blend, and like something you drink at night or after work to help you kind of ease into the evening or like go to sleep. And when we looked at like, well, what's your evening drink? Like there's not really an answer to that. And like we're just kind of excited to be in that space, and we're at a place where like we don't really care who knows about that. We'd love more competition there. Like it's just a better alternative than alcohol. And so those are the things that we're really excited about right now.
Yeah, I think you look at the number of people who drink wine or, cocktails in the evening just to kind of wind themselves down. And Dream Water was kind of an early, company tackling that. Just Chill, Recess Vibe, some more CBD products. But it's wide open, and you guys are built, product first, but I could see you guys doing something really impressive there. So
yeah, we're super excited about it.
Amazing. Well, dude, Paul, thanks so much for making the time.
Man.
This has been amazing. And just wish you guys continued success. But have a great weekend, buddy. Thanks
for doing this, man. Great to see you.
Awesome. You too, bud. Cheers.
All right. See ya.